Julian Assange has just been released from a UK prison after America have struck a plea deal to get him out of prison. Now, Julian Assange, for anyone that doesn't know, is an Australian editor and publisher and activist who founded WikiLeaks back in 2006. This is very interesting. He came to international attention in 2010 after WikiLeaks published a series of leaks from the US Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning. Footage of a US airstrike in Baghdad, the US military logs from the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, and US diplomatic cables. Assange has won multiple awards for publishing and journalism. Now, obviously, the whole thing got huge, because these leaks were supposed to be confidential files, and over on WikiLeaks, Julian Assange posted them for the world to see, and it caused uproar. Assange was raised in several towns in Australia until his family settled in Melbourne in his mid-teens, and he became involved with the hacker community and was convicted of hacking in 1996. Following the establishment of WikiLeaks, Assange was an editor when it published in the Bank of Julius Baer documents footage of the 2008 Tibetan unrest and a report on political killings in Kenya with the Sunday Times. In November of 2010, Sweden issued a European arrest warrant for Assange when the allegations of SA. After losing his appeal against the warrant, he breached bail and took refuge in the Embassy of Ecuador in London. In June of 2012, he was granted asylum in Ecuador, and in August of 2012, on the grounds of the political persecution, and he fears he might be extradited to the US. He stood for the Australian Senate in 2013 and launched the WikiLeaks party, but failed to win a seat. Swedish prosecutors dropped the investigation in 2019. On April 11, 2019, Assange's asylum was withdrawn following a series of disputes with the Ecuadorian authorities. The police were invited into the embassy and he was arrested. He was found guilty of breaching the Bail Act and sentenced to 50 weeks in prison. The US government unsealed the indictment, charging Assange with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion relating to the leaks provided by Manning. In 2019 in May and June 2020, the US government unsealed new indictments against Assange, charging him with violating the Espionage Act of 1917 and alleging that he had conspired with hackers. Assange was incarcerated in HM Prison Belmarsh in London from April 2019 to June 2024, as the United States government extradition effort was contested in the British courts. In June of 2024, Assange agreed to a plea deal with the US prosecutors, pleading guilty to the charge under the US Espionage Act of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified US national defense documents in order to avoid potential imprisonment in the US. Under the terms of the deal, the US Justice Department prosecutors sought the sentence that allowed for his immediate release. Now, we are going to be taking a little dive into this, but obviously this man is one of the OG whistleblowers. He literally just spilt the tea on everything, and it literally took the world by storm, and there was so much attention on this case that it almost became a thing where people couldn't not do anything about it, if that makes sense. But CNN have done a fantastic little document on this, saying Julian Assange released after striking plea deal with the US, and it goes into a lot more details about the entire situation.
A huge development overnight in a case that has captured the world's attention for years. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who's been in jail for more than 5 years, may soon be free. He's expected to appear in a US courtroom tomorrow to accept a plea deal for espionage with the Department of Justice. Assange was released from a British prison last night and flew to his home country of Australia. He spent years trying to avoid US prosecution after seeking asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy as well. Assange is now expected to plead guilty to a felony charge of violating the Espionage Act. He released one of the largest US government breaches of classified documents.
That is absolutely wild, by the way. We did this guy on the UFO topic.
CNN's Nick Robertson following the story for us. You've been following the story for a very long time. This has been an incredibly long saga. Where he's making his court appearance is part of this story. Where is that happening, and what does it say about what's going on in his mind?
Well, it speaks a lot to Julian Assange's state of mind, the fact that he has an absolute distrust of the US judicial system, that he won't appear in a court in North America to face this one count that he's expected to enter this plea deal on and agree to in exchange for time served in jail. So he is going to be appearing in a US district court in Saipan, which is in that archipelago of islands in the Pacific Ocean.
It's absolutely crazy, by the way, that he doesn't trust the US courts, so he just won't appear in one. Like, what does he know? What else does he know?
Not too far from Guam. He's on his way there now, believed to be somewhere close to Bangkok in the aircraft that took him from the UK late yesterday afternoon. This court is part of this sort of complex jigsaw puzzle in sort of essentially facilitating Assange release. And we've got details of this in the last half an hour or so from a UK court saying that this deal was essentially worked out or signed off on in the middle of last week, that the British court system has given him leave to sort of forgo his bail conditions, if you will, to leave the country to go face this count. And the British courts expect by the end of this week to get everything sort of signed, sealed and delivered from Assange's side, from the US side, and that would be an end of his case. But it's been a hugely long road, not least for his family and all those campaigning for his release. And we've heard from his wife, Stella Assange, who's in, we believe, Australia, waiting for his arrival there in the coming days.
Now, what I will say is, from researching this topic, many are divided on Assange. There are literally two camps: pro-Assange, anti-Assange, and there doesn't really seem to be a middle ground. You are either all for what he's done, or you're all against what he's done. Now, personally, I think that something that's classified as seriously classified as what he posted, there was a reason why it was classified, and that's because the public uproar that actually ended up happening. And I think that the public deserved to know that information. You know, I think the secrets that the government obviously hold, I'm under no illusion that, you know, there are plenty more secrets that we aren't aware of. But something as serious as this, I feel like the public deserve to know it so they can make an informed opinion about what their country is entering into.
When we met, he was under house arrest. It will be the first time that I get to see him as a fully free man. And I was just, when I was speaking to him, I said, well, you know, we can go for a walk, and there will be no restrictions, no curfew.
So it's been an incredibly long road to get to this point. As you said, you know, 2010, Assange is in Sweden because the United States is interested in bringing him to justice for the WikiLeaks. Then he is facing an arrest warrant from the Swedish authorities linked to rape allegations, flees to the UK. 2012, the UK says he can be extradited to Sweden. Assange bolts for the Ecuadorian embassy in London. He's there until he's extradited from there in 2019, held in the UK Belmarsh jail since then for the last 62 months, fighting extradition to the United States every step of the way. So it's those 62 months in Belmarsh jail which are expected to be the time served, and that's why he'll get off on this one count.
And we should mention he was also responsible in 2016 for releasing some emails from the campaign chair of Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, which played a role. But those are not any part of these charges, but something to note. Nick Robertson in London live for us this morning. I appreciate you.
Well, joining me now from Canberra is Australian Senator David Shoebridge. Senator, great to have you with us. You have continuously been campaigning for Julian Assange's release. What was your reaction to the news, and what has been the reaction in his native Australia?
Well, there are millions of Australians with a tear in their eye at the moment that thought that Julian will come home. And I know that was very much the feeling in my office. and many of the close supporters of Julian. His brother has been, constantly campaigning. His dad has been constantly campaigning, his wife and his kids. And they've been joined by millions of Australians who are just so glad that this terrible saga will finally come to an end and Julian will be able to come home and spend that time with his family, go for a bushwalk, maybe have a barbecue and go to the beach, because he deserves that.
His mother said in a statement, this shows the importance and power of quiet diplomacy. Have you spoken to his family?
Well, I mean, obviously his family is in close contact with not just myself, but with others, his brother and his dad in particular. And the courage of his wife, Stella, has been extraordinary. Yes, it is about quiet diplomacy, but I think it's far more about millions of ordinary people across the planet who actually prize truth-telling, who think it's important that governments are held to account, that militaries are held to account, and they rate what WikiLeaks and what Julian Assange has done. Truth-telling can be very inconvenient for people in power.
That's exactly what the issue is. The people in power weren't happy that their secrets were exposed, so what do? They got him arrested, they got him silenced, and this isn't an uncommon theme with whistleblowers. Let's look at Boeing. Recently, for example, who have actually, the CEO of Boeing recently came forward in the past couple of weeks to state that they did take action against the whistleblowers and to try and, quote, silence them. Now, obviously, we don't actually know what that technically means, but let's just, recount the whistleblowers. 2 have wound up dead. So it's not uncommon for whistleblowers to be silenced by those in power because, it's inconvenient that their dirty little secrets get exposed to the world. But the people of the world deserve to know. So, swings and roundabouts, really.
But Julian Assange stands for that principle that a truth can be more powerful than any government.
Amen.
He has managed to wait out the US Department of Justice. I wonder if you have any insights into this plea deal. And do you think it's a case of the Biden administration wanting to put this to bed? A saga that has dragged out for too long, as we heard from the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Well, I think this in part reflects the fact that people in Washington from across the aisle, and not just Democrats, but across the aisle, realise that it's important to stand up for brave reporting. It's important to stand up to the ability of people to hold governments to account. As an Australian senator, I never thought it was legitimate that the United States government could seek to prosecute an Australian citizen who was never on US soil for the so-called crime of sharing the secrets of the United States military. What Julian Assange showed was some pretty awful, appalling instances of the United States military in Iraq, in a war which my government was complicit in and also involved in. Incidents like the collateral murder video. I don't believe that it was ever a legitimate act from the United States government to seek to prosecute an Australian citizen who was not on US soil, who had no connection with the United States, for sharing that information. And I am very glad that Julian is finally able to come home.
Senator, many in the United States do see this as a slap on the wrist for what Assange did. What is your response to that?
Well, many of the suggestions from the United States security agencies that this put people at risk and put lives at risk have been tested in US courts and found to not have substance. No government should be immune to the critical review of their actions. No government should be able to hide crimes like what we saw in that collateral murder video from global scrutiny and from criticism.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm being from the UK. Obviously, I'm not going to compare it to the extremities that was shared in this case. But obviously, we've just the UK government right now, the Conservatives, are an absolute, they're just in shambles. Recently, 2 Conservative MPs were just basically dumped from the Tory party because they were found to be bet fixing, basically. They put on bets on when the next general election would be. Of course, they knew when it was going to be, so they ended up getting it right and having a massive cash out. And it's just like, what is going on? And then obviously at the start of the during the COVID stuff, we had our Prime Minister hosting a party at 10 Downing Street while everybody was locked up in their homes on lockdown. Obviously, of course, I will reiterate that is not to the extremities of what was shared in this case, but every government has, you know, secrets, and they all deserve to be, you know, scrutinized on the world stage, no matter what country you're from. I will be the first to point out the UK government's faults, because they've got a lot, and I think other countries should be open to their country's issues as well, regardless of, I guess, political views. So this is going to get political in the comments, so please, I hope it doesn't, but at the same time, you know, we as a public deserve to know these things. I feel anyway.
Julian Assange is not just one individual. He actually stands for a really important truth, and it's important to the United States democracy like it's important to the Australian democracy. The governments have to be able to respond to truth-telling, and the response shouldn't be to put the truth-tellers in jail for the rest of their natural life.
Agreed.
And I think millions of people around the world have reacted to that and have joined the campaign to free Julian Assange.
Senator David Shoebridge, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
I completely agree. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Let's not be too brutal in the comments with the politics. Obviously, I know I voice my opinions, and I do it with the utmost respect to all involved. But at the same time, I do stand by, you know, the fact that as citizens of these countries, we deserve to know what goes on, even if it is utterly horrific, you know, and the government should be held accountable for any actions that they make, because at the end of the day, we have elected these people to be in power, so what they do on behalf of us. That's how I view it anyway. You might view it differently. If you do, get down in the comments, let me know. While you're down there, be sure to jump scare the hell out of that like button if you have gone on to enjoy. Subscribe if you're new, tick on my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload to the channel, and until next time, I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I'll speak to you later. Peace.